the Dream Big Series Season 2. My name is Nuku Atekpe. Can you guess who our special guest is on today's episode? Her name is Madam Elizabeth Ohene. Please follow me inside to meet her. Please get her right. Please get her. Please get her right. Please get her right. Please. Madam Elizabeth Ohene, please, who are your parents and where were you born?
My parents were, I was born to Mr. and Mrs. Stephen Kwesi and Augustina Atape Ohene. They were both teachers, except that my mom, as soon as I was born, stopped teaching, stopped working formally, and proceeded to bring us up. She had 8 children, 6 of whom have survived into adulthood. My father taught in many places in Ghana, but ended his working life as a headmaster of Mauli School in Ho. That's it, really. Those were my parents. I could talk to you all day about them, but I think that's enough about them.
How was it like for you growing up?
I had a very happy childhood. All my memories have been, as I've grown older, I'm trying to think, am I making it up? Am I being unnecessarily romantic about my past? But really, all I can remember is a lot of happiness. It was between the ages of 5 and 9. I was shipped off to the village by my parents to go and live with my grandmother, my mother's mother. And that's how I started school in the village, Abuti Ateti. And I started school, and she was a widow. She was a most remarkable woman. And so I grew up, those formative years, age 5 to 9, were spent with my grandmother. And she was a tough woman. And she gave me a lot of happiness and a lot of self-confidence and a lot of just joy, and she made me know about things that, she talked to me like I was an adult. And she made me know about things that I think my other age groups weren't talked to about. I loved it. Every moment of growing up I did.
Which schools did you attend and what subjects did you study?
I started school in the primary school, as I said, in the village, UP Primary School in Abuti Ateti. Then we moved to Ho with my parents. Then I went to Mauli School for my secondary boarding school, 7 years, as it used to be then. You do the secondary and then you do an A-level. And then I went to the University of Ghana. Later on, I did other courses in Cambridge University, University of Indiana. But my main schooling was Mauli School and the University of Ghana, Legon.
Can you tell us a little about your family?
I come from a large family. My immediate family right now, I'm married to Professor G.K. Ofuswama. He's a retired dean of the law faculty, University of Ghana. We have a son, Granting. Unfortunately, he doesn't live in Ghana. He lives in the United States. He's also married. He has 2 children. I have 3 brothers, surviving brothers, and I have 2 sisters. And then I have innumerable nephews, nieces, cousins, aunts. When you start counting my family, you never end. Okay. So I always tell people who are marrying into family that you better be warned that there are lots of us. So you either have to love us or you will feel very crowded out.
As a child, what did you dream about and how did it influence your life?
See, I'm the firstborn child of my parents. And in some ways, it always made me very bossy, maybe like other firstborns that I know, who shall remain nameless at the moment. I don't know if that is why, but I always loved telling stories. So I always imagine I'll do something that involves telling stories. Now, did I dream about telling stories? I don't know. But I certainly dreamt about, I think it's a way of carrying my bossiness into another level, as in forever finding things wrong and wanting to do something about it. That's what you do when you are a firstborn child. And I think I just wanted to carry that forward. But I think I wanted to make things better.
Madam, please, you are two things, a journalist and a politician. Please tell us about these two things.
A journalist is someone who reports on what happens. And a journalist also expresses opinions. But the main business of a journalist is to tell other people's stories, to tell what is going on in a place that other people don't have access to. Because you see, okay, the world has changed now, and you can sit here in your living room, as we're sitting here, we can put on a television, or you can call someone at the other end of the world and you can know immediately what's going on. But it didn't always used to be like that. But even today, as we sit here, let's say there's something happening in another part of Accra. It's not possible for all of us to phone that place and get exactly what is happening. So a journalist goes there, finds out what is happening, and a journalist is supposed to recount what happened or what is happening as faithfully and as truthfully as the person can, without coloration, without putting your own slant on it. That does not mean that a journalist does not have opinions, but there's a place for opinion. You have to state that clearly, that in this particular one, I'm not reporting what happened or what's happening, but I'm stating my opinion. So it's a very interesting job. It takes you around much of the world. You can report on other people. You can report on other countries. And a politician. A politician is someone who wants to be part of the running of the government of a country. A politician would belong to normally a political party, and your main business is to try and get your party elected into power. That's your main business. And having got into power, your main business is supposed to be to improve upon the quality of life of the people in the country. That's the theory. Now, does that work in fact? I think the politicians now have a very bad reputation. But I'd like to think that I am still very much in favor of politics and in favor of politicians, because I believe that properly done, the world has not yet been able to invent a better way of running the affairs of a country, of a people. And a politician, maybe we would do better if we stop making promises. But if a politician doesn't make a promise, how will he convince people to vote for him? So I suppose that's the difficulty. A journalist reports, not that journalists who have a bad reputation. So I do two professions that all have bad reputations. I don't know how I manage that, but that's it.
Are there any particular subjects that you have to study in school to become a journalist or a politician?
Both professions, it helps if you know, if you have a way with words, if you know, because in both of them you have to communicate. You have to tell a story. You have to convince people about not just your point of view, but you have to tell the story as you saw it. So it helps if you are able to have a way with words. On the matter of the journalist, it's a matter on which my colleagues in this country disagree with me. I don't think that you need to go to a school of journalism, for example, because I remember that I once interviewed and hired someone who had a first degree in architecture, and I hired him as a reporter, producer for the BBC, and he became one of our best, not reporting on architecture at all, but simply that he was somebody who had a firm grip on how to tell a story logically and in an interesting way. So I don't think you need to study any particular subject. You just need to get yourself very well educated to read well. Politician, it will be a good idea if you get yourself properly educated all around, but not necessarily that you have to go and study geography or government. And I think the last thing you should study really is political science.
You were once the Minister of State responsible for education. Can you please tell us about your political experience?
All in all, I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the responsibilities that I had, trying to make a difference. My greatest regret is that I did not succeed in making the public school system attractive to those who work in the public school system. In other words, I was hoping that those who teach in the public school system, those who manage the public schools, would want to send their own children to the schools they manage and to the schools in which they teach. But when we have a situation where those who manage the public school system all send their children to private schools, then it means that we don't have confidence in what we are managing. For me, that was the greatest regret. And I had hoped that by the end of my term, there will be a change in the perception of the public school system. But as you know, we live in hope. I hope that that will happen.
You were once the editor of the Daily Graphic, but left Ghana to work in the UK with BBC. Can you please share your experience with us?
I started my working life at the Daily Graphic. I started as a reporter. I did everything on that paper. Reporter, general reporter, court reporter, sports reporter, sub-editor, literary editor, whatever. I did everything. Then I became the editor of the paper at a time that you might say was a rather difficult period in Ghana's history. So, and I have some of the scars of those periods to keep with me till the day I leave this life. But all in all, it was a good preparation for life and for my later experiences working for the BBC. Working for the BBC was interesting. Those days, it was interesting, but it was sad. The reality was that I worked mostly for the African service. What was sad was that those days, most people in many countries in Africa listened to the BBC to find out what was happening in their own countries. Those were times when, if you were a member of the opposition in any country, you could be guaranteed that your voice will never be heard on the state broadcasting outlet. And in those days, most countries, almost every country, there was only one broadcaster, the state broadcaster. So the people listened to the BBC to find out what was happening in their own country. But the BBC also gave me the opportunity to travel around the whole continent of Africa and in other parts of the world to report, to experience things which were very, very interesting. I always say that probably the most interesting bit for me was the period that I spent in South Africa, the 2-3 years that I lived in South Africa, covering the transition from apartheid through the election to the election of Nelson Mandela and his inauguration. That was, I don't think I can repeat that. That was the most interesting time.
When you were working for the BBC, you reported about dangerous things happening in different parts of Africa. May you please tell us about how it felt reporting about what's happened in the different zones for BBC?
Probably we are referring to covering wars. The Liberia War, the Sierra Leonean War, Somalia. You go there, you are trying to tell what's happening. And you don't go there thinking that, hey, this is a dangerous place. Now when I stopped to think about it, we took a lot of chances. But with time, the BBC became very, very concerned. For example, before you go, they devised a course that you had to undertake about reporting in dangerous places, and they gave us bulletproof vests to wear, and they taught us what to do when they start shooting suddenly. In all those places, you would find that the most important, the most interesting story is always what is happening to the ordinary people who are just trying to survive, to the ordinary mother who is just trying to put food on the table for this child, who is worried because the children can't go to school because there's a war on. Those stories are what I found that I kept my mind firmly on telling the stories of the ordinary person, and I found that that helped me. Often when I do a report that is appreciated by the audience, by the whole world, I find that it is stories that have to do with concentrating on ordinary person trying to do an ordinary thing in an extraordinary situation.
How and where do you find inspiration?
Looking at people's faces. For example, when I'm in town, in Accra, I'm trying to look at everybody's face. I'm trying to think, what's this woman thinking of? As she carries her baby on her back, and she has balanced a big load on her head, and she's trying to dodge through the cars to sell a sachet of water. What really is in her mind? I'm trying to think, what are people thinking of? It sets my mind going on all kinds of directions. I find that it helps me not only to keep my own feet firmly on the ground, it helps me to think of the possibilities that we have about making things better. That's what inspires me, I must say. Simply looking at people, wondering what they are doing, what they are thinking, and what they really want to do.
What are the books you read and why?
I loved novels because I like telling stories. And I found myself drifting very much into historical novels, novels that are set in times in history that fascinate me. I read any well-written thing. It can be a magazine, it can be a novel, it can be whatever, textbook, anything that is well-written, I love to read.
Who has influenced you the most?
My maternal grandmother. This was a woman whose husband died very early and left her with many children and not very much to go on with. And yet she brought them all up well, set them up. Unfortunately, one of the big regrets I have in my life is that she didn't live long enough to see me become a somebody or a grown-up so that I could buy a carton of milk for her, because the thing she did love most of all. And I wish that she'd lived long enough for me to have bought one carton of Milo, one crate of milk, sugar. I don't recall that she liked a lot of sugar, but anyway, that just to give to her, just to say thank you for being the greatest grandmother. But unfortunately, she didn't live long enough.
You still write in the Daily Graphic every Wednesday. You have a page. Can you please tell us, what is this page about?
The page is titled Opinion, and I've been trying to think of a name for the column, and I haven't quite come up with one yet. But, I used to write columns when I worked at the Daily Graphic. Thinking aloud, I called it at the time. And I I must say I'm surprised at myself that I'm still writing for the Daily Graphic, because I didn't think I wanted to do that. But I was asked by the Graphic if I wanted to write an opinion piece. So I just started, and it's just about trying to comment on what's happening around us. Sometimes it's an angry piece, because unfortunately at my age I still get angry about things. And sometimes it's simply trying to draw attention to certain things that I think it would be a good idea if those in positions of authority paid attention to. So I try to write what I think most people are thinking, what most people want to say, and either don't have the opportunity or don't have know-how. And I just try to say what I think ought to be said in a straightforward, unvarnished manner. So sometimes I have difficulty finding a subject to write on. But sometimes I don't, because sometimes the subject is like hitting me in the face. This is what you must write about. So I tried. The day I don't have anything to say, I'll stop.
According to UNICEF, more than 1 in 4 children in Ghana live in poverty. What are your thoughts about this, and what steps can we take to end this?
That is a shocking bit of statistics. One would have hoped that at this time of our development, almost 60 years into our independence, we should not be tolerating such a state of affairs. And really, it's not a question of the children living in poverty. What it means is that their parents are living in poverty. For a child to live in poverty, it means that the parents are living in poverty. So it means that the figures are probably much more than 1 in 4. But I suppose when it's more heartbreaking to say a child is hungry than to say an adult is hungry. Even though I think most mothers would make sure their children eat before they eat, because it must mean, therefore, that for every child that is hungry, there is a mother that is also hungry. It's an indictment on all of us, people like me, who spent a lifetime thinking that you are trying to make things better, whether as a journalist or as a politician. That we are unable to do that, I don't really understand, because this is not a poor country. This is not a poor country. It only means that we haven't been able to better organize things so that there will be enough food to go around. Plus, I dare say, there is even enough food in this country. There is enough food in this country for no child to go to bed hungry. But some people have too much food and throw it away. Some people don't have enough. It's wrong. It means that we don't organize ourselves properly. It means that with better management, with better leadership, we ought to be able to, hunger in this country ought to be history.
Could you please tell us a story that has an impact on your life?
My mother, she took the exams and she did very well. She passed with distinction and got some scholarship to go to Achimota School. Her father had died years before, and her uncle, who was looking after her, said under no circumstance would she go. He said famously that she was only a girl, and he was not prepared to spend one more penny on a girl to go to school. My mom is supposed to have cried and cried and cried and cried. It didn't help her situation. 2 things happened, me hearing this story, that no girl that I know would miss out on going to school because she's a girl. If I have anything to do with it, it won't happen. And I think I have therefore spent the rest of my life making sure that if I have anything to do about it, no female will be denied the opportunity of going to school or going as far as her talents can take her because she's a girl.
I would like to talk to you some more about this, but sadly we're out of time. So thank you for this exquisite information, and I'll talk to you next time.
Okay, thank you. You are most welcome.
Thank you. My name is Nuku Atekbe, and this has been the Dream Big Series Season 2. And see you next time.